Hello and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm looking at the 10 most underrated film noir. I love a good film noir, but the problem with film noir is it's often treated as a genre, whereas really it's a style. It's all about the mood of the piece, the sort of fatalism of it, it's all about the look of it. This very intense chiaroscuro black and white, high contrast between light and dark, lots of people in shadows. That's really the sort of that's really what noir is. It's a kind of style and approach, a kind of feeling, a sensibility, rather than an actual genre. It's equated mostly with the crime film, but it covers all sorts of different kinds of movies and subjects, as we'll see in this top 10. For example, my 10th place film is called Crack Up, and the subject of the film is art. It's about this art curator who's been asked to x-ray an old master, and he's going to find out that it's a fake. And one night he imagines that he thinks he's been in a train crash, but then the train crash doesn't seem to have happened. Is he going mad? It's a little known B movie directed by Irving Reese, and it's not the greatest movie of all time. But it's so fascinating that here's this Hollywood movie which revolves around paintings and art rather than, robbers and gangsters. And it's very interesting also because it's clearly very anti modern art and modernism, which is curious in a film from 1946 because, of course, it was the Nazis who were very much against modernist art. They saw it as corrupting society. And here is a sort of, mid 40s Hollywood film that has the same kind of mentality, actually. It's kind of intriguing. So it's not a great film, but it's well worth finding because it's just a fascinating sort of curio. At number 9, The Face Behind the Mask. Good luck finding this. It's a Peter Lorre film, and he plays this fresh faced immigrant into the United States who gets caught in this horrible hotel fire, and he's disfigured. And he's so horribly disfigured that no one will talk to him or interact with him, and he becomes bitter and twisted, and he turns to crime, and he becomes a crime lord. But still, the goodness in him is still there somewhere. It's really an exercise in Peter Lorre. He's such a great actor, but very seldom was he given the full reign to show what he could do. He was often in bit parts, like in Casablanca and so on. But here he really goes for it. He can really grab hold of this, and it's a great performance by Lorre. And it's a really enjoyable film. It's only about an hour long, so if you can find it anywhere, streaming or anything, it's a really enjoyable hour's entertainment, directed by Robert Florey. In eighth place, another little known director is Hugo Fregonese. Hugo Fregonese was an Argentine who worked in Hollywood cinema. He also worked for a little while in Britain and Europe. And he's kind of been forgotten. Last year in Il Cinema Ritrovato, which is this Italian film festival, they did a series of his films, a retrospective, trying to revive his reputation. And I saw quite a few of them. And he was a brilliant stylist. His films are really impressively made. One of my favourites was One Way Street. Now, I'll confess that this is one of my favourites because it's a James Mason movie, and I love anything with James Mason in. And this is a great James Mason film. At the start of the film, he's a doctor, and he double crosses Dan Duryea. I've never known how to pronounce Dan Duryea's name, so I apologise if I've pronounced it wrong. He's always plays a villain in these kind of movies. He's a gangster boss, and James Mason double crosses him and takes off with his girlfriend, goes south of the border to Mexico. And then the film sort of changes, and it becomes this kind of idyllic portrait of James Mason living in this Mexican village, getting to know the locals, and practicing being a doctor and finding his true calling in life. But then, of course, the forces of darkness come to collect, sort of thing. So it's kind of a film noir in the sun, with a sort of nice, happy bit in the middle. So it's a funny old movie, but I really enjoyed it, and Mason gives an absolutely terrific performance. If you're interested in Hugo Fregonese, look out. This is a really obscure film. Man in the Attic. It was a remake of a film about Jack the Ripper. And what happens is this man, this stranger, turns up at this middle class household in Victorian London, purports to be some kind of surgeon. But they start to suspect that he's actually Jack the Ripper. The man in question is played by Jack Palance, giving an absolutely brilliant performance that is simultaneously sinister and sympathetic. It's a very good performance, and slowly, the woman of the house who's kind of attracted to him but she's also in a sort of relationship with a police officer. So the authorities start to circle around him. I think it's one of the best Jack the Ripper films I've ever seen, but it's very little known. If you can find it, look out for it. It's really great. Seventh place, and this was the film that really inspired me to do this video because I've just seen it recently for the first time. Alias Nick Beale. I had never heard of this movie, and I read about it on a website and I sort of check it out. It's terrific. It's directed by John Farrow, another little known director, but I think now that I've seen a few of his films, I'm ready to say he's one of the great stylists of Hollywood film from the classic era. Really great stylist. He doesn't use close-ups very much. He pulls the camera back, uses full body shots or medium length shots. He follows the movement of the actors. He shoots in depth. Beautiful, beautifully staged films. Alias Nick Beale is rather odd. It plays like a very sophisticated noir film. There's this guy, he wants to be the local governor. He's a good guy fighting the criminals. And one night, this guy comes to him and says, look, you want to get this mob boss. I know how to do it. And he says, I've got these books that show what the mob boss is up to. You have to get them illegally, but if you do that, you'll get him. And this prospective governor falls for it. But what he doesn't realise is that this man he's in cahoots with is the devil. Really, the devil. What you realise about this film is it's not a film noir, it's a supernatural movie. But the whole thing plays like a very sophisticated urban film noir. And the devil is played by Ray Milland, one of my favourite actors, in a suit and trilby, looking very dapper. And the movie moves through the sort of machinations of organised crime and politics and everything towards this, denouement in this in this kind of harbour in the fog at night, where a priest comes to this governor's help, and stops Ray Milland taking him off into the sea to this island of lost souls. It's great stuff. It's fantastic. It's a wonderful mix of noir and supernatural movie, and it really does work. It's a bit trite, but Farrow's staging and the acting is superb. Ray Milland and Farrow also worked together on my sixth film, which is called The Big Clock. This is a bit better known, but it's not, I think, praised enough. It's a really great noir thriller. Ray Milland plays a guy who works for a crime magazine, a successful crime magazine, and his boss, the editor, wonderfully played by Charles Laughton. Charles Laughton kills his mistress in a fit of passion and then tries to frame Ray Milland. Again, what's great about this movie is Farrow's styling. I love the opening shots, the use of space as the camera focuses in on a lit window in an office block at night. The use of space is fantastic. But the real joy of this film is Charles Laughton. I love Charles Laughton, one of the great actors of the 20th century. And here, Laughton is in totally indulgent mode. He clearly doesn't think much of the script, so he's having fun with it. And he's just completely off kilter in this movie. He's out there. Some people don't like his performance. I love it. I hang on every line reading. There's a wonderful scene where he gets the board of his magazine together and he's sort of lecturing them. And Laughton is just all over the place. He's having a great time with it. Everything he does is sort of non-naturalistic, but sort of works so well. Apparently he and Milland didn't get on, and Laughton enjoyed annoying Ray Milland enormously. I love the tension between them in the film. In fifth place is Raw Deal. Now, this used to be one of the most important early noirs, what set the tone for the rest of the genre. It's kind of forgotten now. It was a very early film of Anthony Mann, one of my favourite directors. And it's a straightforward noir plot. This guy has taken the rap for someone else's crime. He escapes from prison, not really knowing that actually the person who he took the rap for has organised this to sort of get him. But he manages to get away. And most of the film he spends in the company of two women who are vying for his affections. Very well played and very well written characters, played by Claire Trevor and Marsha Hunt. Terrific performances. And it really gives a sort of solid characterisation at the centre of the movie. But the real joy of Raw Deal is John Alton's cinematography. Oh my God. There is a reason that Alton was one of the most praised figures in film noir photography. The photography in this film is incredible. You could almost feel like you could reach into the screen and sort of crunch it. You know, that it's like it's filmed, some scenes are filmed in this kind of fog. It's sort of, the darkness is overwhelming. It's so beautiful and so rich and atmospheric. So check it out. If you can find it on Blu-ray, it is available on Blu-ray. You really should watch it in the best print possible. Now, in fourth place, one of my favourite directors of all time is Jacques Tourneur, who was a French director who worked largely, almost completely in Hollywood. It's very difficult to explain why Tourneur is such an important director, such a beautiful director, because he was a director for hire, and he worked in all the genres. He worked in horror, crime. He did a pirate movie with Burt Lancaster. He did, pretty much everything, right? And he stuck to the rules of the genre. There's nothing unexpected. It's all in the treatment, the sensibility. He makes that perfect sort of genre box. But because of the way he treats it, the way he treats characters, the way he has people speaking to each other, the use of wind, the use of subtle little details, it's like seeping out of that perfect box is something else, something different, something sort of more mysterious and enigmatic. Take Nightfall. This is my number 4 choice. This is one of his later films made in the late 50s, one of the very latest noirs. And it stars, of all people, Aldo Ray, a rather unusual presence in the lead role. And the girl that he's trying to get with in the film is played by Anne Bancroft, another kind of unusual presence in that kind of role. And their initial scenes when they meet and talk together in a cafe and a bar, they're so extraordinary. There's nothing quite like them in American film. They're so naturalistic and believable. But there's a sort of sense, a weary sense of fatalism about it. Anyway, he gets mixed up with 2 really hardball criminals who have lost the money from some scheme that they did, so they're after him. And the whole thing develops like a normal crime drama. In the plot and the narrative, in the type of characters, there's nothing unusual about this film. It's all in the style and the treatment of it, the sensibility of it, in a way that's very hard to explain. For those people who want a bit of action, there is an incident with a snowplow at the end, which is good fun. But it's all about just the rhythms, the gentle pauses in the conversation, the sort of slight tension and moving around each other, Aldo Ray and Anne Bancroft in their scenes together. It's a very beautiful film. In third place, another of the great directors of Hollywood. Every so often there's an attempt to sort of, rehabilitate his reputation, and he falls back again. Is Frank Borzage. He's best known for his sort of romantic dramas, very syrupy dramas, but beautifully made. Right towards the end of his career, he made a film noir. It's called Moonrise, and I think it might be his best film. And it's drenched in the fatalism, the sense of a bad destiny that is there in all noir films. But in this one, it's ramped up to the max. It's about this guy, and he's lived under the shadow of the fact all his life, ever since he was a child, that his dad killed someone and was hung for it. And the whole film is like he's being driven towards the same destiny as his father. And of course he accidentally kills someone and he goes on the run. It's an extraordinarily beautiful film, very moving film. It follows all the rules of film noir, but it sort of transcends them to become something more mythic, more spiritual. Particularly in the persona of a character played by Rex Ingram, wonderful actor. And he plays this guy who's living out remotely on his own. And he becomes a kind of guru, a mentor figure for this man on the run. And he has a wonderful line that has stayed with me ever since I first saw the film. He says, "I decided to remove myself from the rest of mankind, the worst crime a man can commit." That stayed with me. At number 2, While the City Sleeps. Now, everyone knows Fritz Lang, one of the great directors of cinema, and many people know his American movies like The Big Heat, You Only Live Once, Fury, etc., etc. While the City Sleeps seems to vanish, through the cracks sort of thing. It's one of my favourite Fritz Lang films. I love the storyline. Vincent Price plays this newspaper owner. There's a serial killer in the streets, and he says to his group of reporters, senior reporters, whichever one of you can find out who the killer is, you'll get promoted, you'll be the editor, sort of thing. So 3 crack reporters go on the mission. I love that kind of film where you know, it splits up into sort of three. So you're watching three different people tackling things in three different ways, like in LA Confidential, if you remember that film. I'm a sucker for that kind of thing. And this one is really well done. You know, Dana Andrews is the main character, but, you know, George Sanders is one of the other characters, another one of my favourite actors. And it's a really short, sharp film. No fat on it, no lean on it. But it's so true about the sort of the media and crime and punishment and how they interrelate. It's slightly cynical. It's a slightly jaundiced film, typical of that time and that genre. But it's very true and it's very light on its feet and very witty. And I strongly recommend it. It's a great movie. But my number one is Nightmare Alley. Now, that name might ring a bell. It was recently remade by Guillermo del Toro. I have not seen the remake, don't really want to. I've loved the original, directed by Edmund Goulding, for many, many years. It's a very different noir. It's set in the world of fairgrounds and carnivals. And it stars Tyrone Power, not my favourite actor, but he's very good in this. And he really wanted to make this. And he plays this guy who does a mind reading act. But through sort of subterfuge, it extends outwards and he starts performing for high society, but he's gunning for a fall. And eventually, the fall he endures is one of the worst in noir. He ends up as the geek. And this is a guy in all fairgrounds and carnival shows in the narrative of this film who's a drunk, who's hit hard times. And what they do is they get him to bite the head off a live chicken for amusement. And at the end, he's reduced to that. It's the most appalling end for anyone in a noir film. I absolutely love the film. I think it's very intelligent. It's beautifully filmed. And the way it uses the world of carnival and fairground is so eerie and atmospheric. It's a wonderful film to be in. I can see why Guillermo del Toro was drawn to it and wanted to remake it, because it suits his sensibility, you know, his kind of gothic sensibility. And I love it too. And the film doesn't lose any of its fascination as it moves into high society, into New York society. It's a very biting, harsh film, but it's also weirdly beautiful. And I go back to it every now and again. So those are my 10 underrated noirs. Let me know if there's any films I've missed out or that are particularly special to you. I love this genre, stroke style, and I'd love to hear about more films that I'm not aware of. If you like my content, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much.